The escape pod drifted slowly through the cold border of space, spinning just enough to keep its warning light flickering on and off. Its power was almost gone. Inside, a single human lay strapped into the crash seat, breathing shallowly, skin pale from dehydration and weeks of fear. No one was supposed to be here. This region sat between mapped trade lanes and claimed territory, a quiet stretch that only small trading vessels crossed when they wanted to avoid attention. The alien freighter Kithra's Promise was one such ship, old, practical, and crewed by beings who valued profit and survival more than heroics. The sensor alert chimed softly. Captain Rillon glanced at the display and frowned. "Debris," he said at first, his voice calm. "Probably scrap from one of the border skirmishes." Trouble meant delays, inspections, or worse, entanglement with species that had stronger fleets and longer memories. "Scan for life," Rillon ordered, already knowing the answer he hoped for. A pause. "There is life," the navigator said. "One occupant, species human." Short-lived, emotion-driven. Their ships were tough, their crews stubborn, and their politics complicated. Helping a human could bring questions no one wanted to answer. Rillon straightened. "Status of nearby traffic. And if this pod belongs to a military vessel?" "Bring it aboard," he said. The engineer blinked. "Captain." The human inside did not move. The medic approached carefully. Humans were physically weaker than many species, but surprisingly resilient. She scanned the body, her eyes widening slightly. "He's alive," she said. "Barely." As they worked, Rillon watched quietly. This was already more involvement than he liked, but turning away now felt wrong. The human was placed in the med bay. Fluids were administered, warmth restored. Slowly, his breathing steadied. Hours later, the human opened his eyes. They were brown, tired, sharp even through pain. He looked around, confusion clear on his face. His gaze landed on the medic, then Rillon. "Am I dead?" the human asked, his voice rough but calm. "No," the medic replied. "You are aboard a civilian vessel. You were rescued." When he opened them again, there was something intense there, not fear, but focus. "Thank you," he said. It was said simply, but with a weight that made the room feel smaller. Over the next days, the human recovered slowly. His name was Elias. He did not speak much at first, but when he did, he listened more than he talked. He asked about the ship, about the crew, about trade routes and border laws. He remembered names after hearing them once. He never complained. When told that his species was considered risky to assist, he nodded as if he already knew. "Still," he said quietly one cycle, "you didn't leave me." When a human patrol finally intercepted the Kithra's Promise, the crew felt a collective release of tension. The patrol ship was larger, armed, and clearly official, but there was no accusation in their signals, only relief. Elias prepared to leave. He stood in the cargo bay, now steady on his feet, wearing a spare uniform the crew had adapted for him. Rillon extended a data slate. "Your official recovery record, it states minimal involvement. Any of you?" The incident was logged, filed, and eventually forgotten by most of the crew. Just another risk taken. Just another story in border space. But in human records, Elias' survival was marked differently. And far away, long after the freighter had moved on, the coordinates of a small alien ship were stored, quietly, carefully, waiting. Years passed, and the small trading ship Kithra's Promise kept moving through space like it always had. Its hull gained new scars. Its engines grew louder with age. Some crew members left, others joined, but Captain Rillon remained. He preferred familiarity, especially in a galaxy that changed faster every cycle. The region around them did not stay quiet. Borders shifted. Powers grew bold. Large fleets moved where they once had not, claiming space with treaties backed by weapons. Small traders like Rillon's ship learned to stay alert, to avoid attention, to survive by slipping through gaps left by giants. At first, the trouble came slowly. Inspections lasted longer. Taxes appeared where none had existed. Patrol ships demanded information instead of simple identification. Then ships started disappearing. At a trade station near the outer belt, Rillon heard the rumors while negotiating fuel prices. A convoy from his own species had vanished between two systems. No wreckage, no survivors. Another trader claimed an entire colony had gone silent after refusing protection from a rising regional power. Rillon returned to his ship with a heavy feeling in his chest. The navigator confirmed the news later. Long-range chatter matches the reports, military movements increasing. Ships were forced closer to contested space. The Kithra's Promise was running medical supplies to a small outpost when the first hostile scan hit them. It was sharp, focused, and unmistakably military. Unidentified vessel, a voice crackled over open channel. Reduce speed and prepare for boarding. Registered and neutral. Future transits will require authorization, the officer said. Failure to comply will be treated as hostile intent. Resistance was punished. Rillon rerouted immediately, but they were too late. By the time they arrived, the station was damaged, its docks burned. Survivors were being rounded up. The Kithra's promise stayed hidden, engines cold, watching helplessly. That night, Rillon reviewed every option he had. None were good. They were too small to fight, too visible to keep running forever. Their species had never built great fleets. They had relied on trade, diplomacy, and staying out of the way. But the galaxy was no longer allowing that. The final blow came weeks later. A convoy of traders from their home region was ambushed near a major junction. The attackers did not even pretend it was enforcement. They disabled engines, seized cargo, and destroyed 2 ships as a warning. The message spread fast: comply or be erased. The council issued statements. Appeals were made. Messages were sent to allies who were suddenly very busy elsewhere. No one answered. The Kithra's promise received orders to assist in evacuating a border outpost that could not defend itself. It was small, under-equipped, and surrounded by growing hostile presence. As they approached, sensors lit up with enemy signatures, too many. Rillon felt a cold certainty settle in him. This was not harassment. This was the end. The outpost's commander appeared on screen, fear barely hidden behind discipline. We cannot hold. Our shields will fail within hours. Workers, children, the ship groaned under the extra mass. Captain, the engineer said urgently, we cannot outrun them like this. Alarms echoed through the corridors. Rillon gave orders calmly, but inside he felt the weight of every life aboard his ship. He had made choices before that carried risk. This one carried consequence. Hours passed, shields weakened, systems overheated. The outpost behind them fell silent. The enemy hailed them. Surrender your vessel and cargo, the commander said. You will be spared. If you ever need help, call. Rillon had dismissed it years ago, a polite gesture, an emotional promise from a species known for those, but humans were also known for something else. They remembered. Navigator, Rillon said slowly. Do we still have the old recovery log? The navigator hesitated, then her eyes widened as the file opened. The encoded signal, it includes a return protocol. Or powerless. What transmission was that? The hostile commander demanded. Rillon opened the channel. A request, he replied calmly. For whom? He did not regret saving a human years ago, even now. Then the sensors screamed. New contacts, the navigator shouted. Multiple signals, no, hundreds emerging beyond range. Someone had answered. The message echoed through every system on the bridge, calm and steady, as if it had always been there, waiting. This call has been received. Confusion spread through their formations, small shifts and hesitation visible on the tactical display. Captain, the navigator whispered, the signal origin, it's human, but the scale. Its multiple jump points activating at once. Its hull was dark, layered, marked with symbols that meant nothing to him but radiated purpose. It did not rush forward. It simply arrived and held position like a wall. Then another appeared, and another. They came in disciplined silence, dozens at first, then hundreds, each one precise in its placement. Heavy ships, carriers, escorts, support vessels. Not a chaotic swarm, but a planned arrival. The hostile fleet began to pull back, breaking formation. This is not possible, the enemy commander broadcast, his voice strained. Human forces are not deployed in this region. This region, the human voice said evenly, has just become relevant. On the bridge of one of the largest human vessels, a human officer stood at the command platform. His hair was darker now, his face marked by age and experience, but his eyes were the same brown eyes that had once opened in a small med bay aboard an alien freighter. Elias looked at the tactical display, then at the small, damaged ship protected behind the human line. They came, he said quietly. An aide beside him nodded. The call was authenticated, old debt marker, priority red. Open channel to hostile commander. You have no jurisdiction. You will withdraw beyond this system. You will not pursue, harass, or retaliate against these vessels or their species. Finally, the enemy ships powered down weapons and began to retreat, slow and cautious, as if afraid sudden movement might change the outcome. When the last hostile signature vanished from sensors, the bridge of the Kithra's promise filled with quiet disbelief. They're leaving, the navigator said. The medic sat down heavily. "We're alive." He stared at the human fleet, at the ships that had come because of a choice made years ago. A direct channel request appeared. "Captain Rillon of the Kethra's Promise," a human voice said. "This is Commander Elias Grant. Request permission to speak." "Captain," Elias said, inclining his head slightly in a human gesture of respect. "You kept flying." Evacuees were transferred carefully, treated gently with efficiency that spoke of long practice. Rillon watched it all, struggling to understand the scale of it. "This response," he said slowly, "it is excessive. We measure them by choice." Other small ships emerged from hiding. Other outposts sent cautious signals. They all saw the same thing: humans had come not to conquer, but to answer. On distant channels, other powers took notice. Analysts reassessed. Strategists recalculated. A single rescue had changed equations written across sectors. On the Kethra's Promise, the crew gathered on the bridge, watching the human fleet move like a living shield. "We thought we were alone," the engineer said quietly. Rillon shook his head. "We were never alone, we just didn't know who was listening." When he stepped aboard the Kethra's Promise, the corridor seemed smaller than he remembered. The air smelled the same. Rillon met him at the hatch. "You look stronger," Rillon said. Elias nodded. "You look the same." "We did." The ships held their positions around the system like a quiet wall. Repair vessels moved carefully between damaged stations and civilian ships. Medical transports accepted the wounded without question, treating alien species with the same care given to humans. Communications flowed, calm and organized, without threats or pressure. For the crew of the Kethra's Promise, the days that followed felt unreal. Captain Rillon watched from the bridge as power was restored to the border outpost that had nearly fallen. Human engineers worked side by side with local technicians, sharing tools, translating instructions, and never once acting as if they owned the place. "They are not taking control," the navigator said softly. "No," Rillon replied. "They are standing guard." Reports came in constantly: political reactions, military repositioning, civilian distress calls from nearby systems that had heard the news and dared to ask for help. An aide stepped closer. "Requests for protection are increasing. Command wants to know how long we intend to remain." He remembered drifting in silence, believing no one would come. He remembered waking up on an alien ship, surrounded by strangers who chose mercy. This was not escalation. This was balance correcting itself. On the alien side, the reaction was slower and more uncertain. Their council convened in emergency session. Many voices spoke at once, fearful, hopeful, confused. "They brought an entire fleet for one individual," one elder said. "What does that say about them?" The human response was always the same. No territory claimed, no tribute demanded, no permanent bases established. Only protection, temporary and specific. As days passed, it became clear that the hostile power that had started the conflict was pulling back across multiple systems. Their commanders issued public statements about strategic realignment and resource conservation. "You could have ignored the call," the engineer said one cycle, unable to keep the question inside any longer. 8 years is a long time. And humans don't abandon parts of themselves easily. How many volunteered ships, resources, and time without being ordered? Some things did not need explanation. Soon the system stabilized. Evacuees were resettled. Trade lanes reopened under human watch. The small outpost rebuilt stronger than before. Then quietly the human fleet began to thin. One by one, ships departed, slipping back into normal space lanes. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just enough to show trust returning. Before Elias left, he met Rillon one last time aboard the freighter. "The Council will want treaties," Rillon said. "Agreements." Rillon clasped it with his own. "You changed more than you know," Elias said. Rillon shook his head. "We just saved a life." Far away in command centers and quiet offices, new calculations were being written. New warnings added. If you harm those under human protection, you answer to them all. And if you save one of them. Threats faded before forming. A single choice had reshaped their future, and the galaxy would not forget it. The galaxy did not return to how it was before. It could not. The human fleet was gone, but its absence felt heavier than its presence. Trade lanes stayed open. Border patrols kept their distance. Predatory movements slowed, then stopped. No announcement explained why. Everyone already knew. The Kethra's Promise traveled through space with a quiet confidence it had never known. Scanners identified it early. Ports answered its requests without delay. Ships that once might have tested its defenses now altered course. Captain Rillon noticed these changes, but he did not allow pride to take root. Pride led to mistakes. Instead, he watched, listened, and learned. Other captains began to reach out. At first, it was cautious, questions disguised as conversation. "Is it true?" they asked. "Did the humans really come for you?" A rescued pilot, a shared fuel cell, a warning sent instead of silence, tiny acts forgotten in logs and margins. Humans began to appear in those memories more often than expected. Human diplomats arrived months later, not with fleets but with words. They spoke simply. They listened more than they talked. They did not demand loyalty, only clarity. "If you wish to remain neutral," they said, "we respect that." On a quiet station overlooking a blue star, Rillon attended a gathering of captains and envoys. It was informal by design. No banners, no grand titles. Elias Grant was there wearing a simple uniform with fewer markings than expected. He looked tired but content. "You changed the balance," one envoy said to him carefully. Elias shook his head. "No. We responded to it. But strength that demands repayment isn't strength, it's leverage." When conflict threatened to rise elsewhere, messages were sent, not just to human command, but to those who had once shown kindness. Networks of mutual aid formed, quiet and resilient. The galaxy began to develop something it had long lacked: memory. Not the cold memory of grudges or borders, but the living memory of who had stood when it mattered. The Kithra's Promise eventually retired from long-haul trade. Its engines were old. Its hull had earned its rest. The ship was placed in orbit above a calm world, converted into a training vessel. Young crew members walked its corridors, learning navigation, negotiation, and one lesson repeated more than any other: every choice echoes. He would stop near the med bay, remembering a human who had once opened tired eyes and said thank you as if it meant everything. He had not known then that it did. On a distant human world, Elias stood before a group of new officers. The story was part of their training now, though simplified. "A single rescue," Elias told them, "saved lives you will never meet. Not because of force, but because of memory." You did not need to say it often, and when it was said, no fleet tested it. The hostile power that had once threatened the border never returned to its old ways. Its leaders aged out, replaced by those who remembered watching an entire fleet arrive for a reason no strategist had predicted. Mercy had entered the equation. One quiet cycle, long after the crisis had passed into history, a damaged ship drifted near an unclaimed lane. Its beacon was weak, its crew exhausted. A passing trader detected it and slowed. "Escape pod detected," the navigator said. The captain looked at the display. "Any sign of life?" "Bring them aboard," the captain said. Far away, systems continued to turn. Fleets moved. Empires rose and fell, but one truth remained steady. In a galaxy that measured power by fleets and fear, humanity had changed the scale. They answered the call, and because of that, the galaxy learned to listen. They once saved a human. Years later, an entire fleet answered the call. HFY.